I have this story here about the Trump organization and the Trump SoHo specifically. Tell me what's going on there. Give me a little rundown.
There's so much going on at the Trump SoHo. So I'm gonna tell you about.
There's so much going on with the Trump administration in general. Like, it's so hard to keep up with. But let's just.
That's true.
I think this is a good example of like how the whole thing is screwed up.
Exactly. So the good news is that the Trump SoHo is about to have the Trump taken out of Trump SoHo.
All right.
But here's the story, and this really is emblematic of how Trump has treated the presidency as really a brand opportunity. And more of a reality show than the highest office in the United States. So the Trump organization announced the building of this grand Trump SoHo luxury apartment condo hotel in 2007 at the end of The Apprentice. So this was using The Apprentice as one of the peak Trump.
Yeah.
And this was actually Ivanka and Don Jr. Were supposed to be kind of their first foray going out onto their own and really taking on the Trump brand and taking on the work here. So that was in 2007.
If I could just point out, Donald Jr., the dumbest Trump child. This is just me speaking, but like. But like, I think we've established that at this point. This is now canon.
Right. So I'm gonna skip ahead. There's a lot that happens between 2007 and 2015, and we'll get back to that.
Okay.
But the thing that drew our attention to this as an organization that works to protect democracy and to protect democratic ideals in the Constitution was the fact that in April, Reuters found out that 11 state and local pension funds had invested in a private equity fund called CIM Fund 3. So it's one of these private equity real estate funds. And they had invested in the fund back in 2007. But in 2015, Trump SoHo went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And
well, that's weird that a Trump entity went bankrupt.
Hard to believe.
Wow.
Hard to believe.
Shocked.
But Trump SoHo went bankrupt, and this private equity fund acquired it in foreclosure.
Okay.
So they acquire the hotel, but even though the Trump organization has gone bankrupt in this development, they keep on Trump International Hotels Management to market and manage this hotel. So
how does that
work?
How
there's a great question as to why in the world, when over 263 of the units remained unsold, and that was part of what led to the bankruptcy, CIM Group decided to leave the contract in place with Trump International to market and manage that hotel. But the problem arises not in 2015 necessarily, but once President Trump is elected. Mm-hmm. Because in the Constitution, there are two clauses that essentially say the president is not supposed to accept or receive any profits. They use the word emoluments.
Emoluments.
There's a lot of...
Yes. You just said the phrase that pays.
Yes, the phrase that pays, emoluments. So I like to say profits, benefits, compensation. He's not supposed to receive any compensation other than his salary while he's in office.
Yeah.
And the reason that the framers put that clause into the Constitution is because they were obsessed with corruption.
Yeah.
And concerns about corruption at the time that the revolution happened and then later in the constitutional conventions. So he's not supposed to accept anything from foreign governments, and there's a separate clause that says the United States nor any of the other states are allowed to give any type of compensation or emolument or profit to the president.
Okay, so here's there's more to this, of course, but this is something I've said from the very beginning. Like, we are about to find out just how smart the founding fathers actually were, because, like, I think that there are some things that presidents just haven't done in the past because they're good people for the most part.
They came into this with the idea of being a public servant.
Right. And so, like, what kind of laws actually stop, a huckster like Donald Trump from profiting off of the presidency? And, like, we're seeing that play out. Like, there are a couple of things, but at the same time, a lot of this stuff is just purely tradition. Like, everybody brings up the the fact that Jimmy Carter had to sell his peanut farm.
Right.
Everybody brings that up, right?
Yeah.
But like, Jimmy Carter maybe could have just kept his peanut farm and said, "Screw you guys, I'm gonna have my peanut farm."
Well, one of the reasons that he didn't
Yeah.
was because up until now, presidents have been very careful about making sure that they didn't have business entanglements.
What's that like?
Going into the White House. And so, he did, out of an abundance of caution, sell his stake in the peanut farm.
What a charming sentiment you just put out there. Gosh.
I know. And fortunately, as I said, this is enshrined in the Constitution. This isn't, in this case, this isn't just a tradition or a norm. This is an important piece of the law of the land, the Constitution. And so, there are actually legal cases pending that are suing President Trump in the federal courts for violating these clauses, both the Foreign Emoluments Clause and the Domestic Emoluments Clause. Now, the reason that this particular case, the Trump SoHo, is one that came to our attention is because there were 11 state and local pension funds who were invested in this private equity fund.
Oh, my.
That acquired Trump SoHo. Now, there are a lot of reasons looking back on this now that they really should have had qualms about allowing that foreclosure to go through and adding this to the portfolio.
Sure.
But the thing that grabbed our attention was once Trump was elected, then it became a vehicle for state funds to be transferred directly to the president's organization. And we know from his financial disclosures that he actually received income, over $2.8 million in income, from the Trump International Hotels Management that was marketing and managing the Trump SoHo. So it was a short skip and a hop from state pension funds paying massive private equity fees to CIM Group, and then CIM Group paying millions in fees to the Trump International Hotel Management, LLC.
Oh, my God.
So that is a clear violation of
that seems pretty clear cut.
It seems pretty clear cut. And so we wrote to CalPERS and to New York State Common Retirement Fund. Those are two of the largest state pension funds in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
They also have a long history of engaging on corporate governance and transparency and ethics. So we actually thought, when we call this to their attention, they will take action on this. Because, one of the things that a democracy depends upon is public officials actually complying with the law. Yeah. And so we wrote to them. The responses
what a novel concept.
Right.
Public officials complying with the law.
Right.
The President of the United States actually obeying, the law.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. All these lawyers.
You and your kooky legal speak. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
So, unfortunately, this was not a case where the public officials immediately stood up and took action.
Okay.
Instead, the responses that we got included basic subterfuge. They said, well, it's a limited partnership that we're involved in here. CIM Group is the one who makes decisions about this. We invested before the Trump SoHo Hotel was part of the portfolio. And so what we said back to them was, we understand that. We understand that, this is an investment vehicle that you invested in back in 2007. But while your fiduciary responsibility requires you to earn certain levels of returns, it also requires you to earn those returns without violating the law. So you can't tell us that you're getting a good return off of somebody's, bookmaking operation, and that's a good reason to stay invested in that operation. If something is if an asset or a fund is being operated in violation of the law, it doesn't matter what the return is. You have to look at whether or not you're complying with the law. And in the case of state pension funds, not only do the laws say that their investments, can't be contrary to law, but they also are held to very high ethical standards to avoid the appearance of impropriety. So, again, this is somewhat parallel to what we see in co-equal branch of government down on this end of Pennsylvania Avenue,
Right.
where we have one branch of government, the president, the executive branch, who is not only ignoring the laws but flouting his violation of the laws, and the public officials who have the authority and the responsibility to hold him accountable are not the ones who are taking action, but it's the citizenry, the ordinary people who are coming out and calling for them to hold the United States to the Constitution and to American ideals. And so that's the story here. After 4 months of intense pressure from thousands of Californians, from people going to speak to the board of directors at CalPERS, from people writing in to the New York State Comptroller's office, we finally found out last week that CIM Group is going to terminate the Trump Organization's contract to market and manage Trump SoHo and take Trump out of the name.
That's a win.